Where can the Wolves end up by the end of the season? Let's talk about it on Coaching Up. Wolves Crunch Time Quarterly Report number 3. Just got done here. Games 40 through 60. Gonna kind of dive in on both sides of the ball, talk about the players, and try to answer that question: where the Wolves can end up by the end of the regular season. Could they get potentially the 1 or 2 seed? Will they find themselves near the play-in? We're going to talk about it today. This video is sponsored by Sasquatch Media. Sasquatch Media is the premier video production company in the Midwest for documentary and commercial production. Sasquatch Media is an Emmy award-winning production company. From commercial to branded content and TV series, they specialize in cinema quality production. They handle all aspects of the production process. Recently, they were part of production for a Honda ad that played before the Olympic coverage. You want a group that is hardworking and extremely passionate about what they do to share your story with others. Sasquatch Media should be your first option. Check out Sasquatch Media at sasquatch.media. SSQTCH.media. First, let's start with the standings update. The Wolves currently find themselves 4th in the West after their win in Denver, winning 7 out of the last 10. But over that stretch here, between the games 40 and 60, the Wolves went 11-9. Some of the good wins were against the Thunder and the Raptors. Those are big games for us. And then good losses, I would say the Spurs and the Rockets. We had a handful of more bad losses than we had in the first 2 quarters of the season with the Jazz, Bulls, Grizzlies, and Pelicans. All 4 of those were tough ones. We needed those, and hopefully we don't need them at the end of the year. But regardless of that, the Wolves still find themselves 4th in the West, and arguably in a much better spot than they were last year. We're going to dive into both sides of the ball here and talk about big picture stuff at the end here, but we're going to start with the offensive side of the ball. Shout out to our friends at Wolfwise Stats. I'm going to be using a lot of their statistics today to break down how the Wolves have been doing throughout the season. So if you have not, give them a follow on social media at Wolfwise Stats. And then also just check out their website. They are adding things almost. It feels like every time I look on the website, there's something new. But with that being said, we're going to look at the team page here first and kind of start off where we're kind of at in the full season scheme of things. As you see here, a lot of green, which is good. But we're going to focus on the offensive columns here, mostly with these on the left side here to start. Offensively, we are, I would say, a top 10 offense. I might even argue a top 5 offense. Even though our offensive rating is 9th, we're 4th in points per game, top 5 shooting team, even not on a high volume of 3-point shots. We're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league with one of the most efficient 3-point shooters in Anthony Edwards. Now, if you'd told me this a couple of years ago, this is what our dream was as Wolves fans, is we were just hoping that the Wolves could finally get some offense going. We needed to go get guys that could help surround Anthony Edwards as we saw him start to flourish. We just needed more shooting. Well, here we go, Wolves fans. We're there. And so you should be excited about this team. Some of the things just offensively that are a little concerning, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the focus and the effort issues at times, is that turnover rate. On the season, the Wolves are 14th in the league in turnover percentage. So right in the middle of the pack. But in that last 20 games, we kind of, and this is why you saw a lot of losses to bad teams. We were 23rd in turnover percentage over that last quarter. A lot of it has to do with if you're looking at this assist to turnover stat, 27th in assist to turnover stats over the last 20 games. That usually tells us as a coach, I mean, part of coaching up is I'm using my coaching perspective and kind of giving you some analysis there. When coaching, we look at this number a lot, assist to turnover ratio, because that kind of tells us, right, one, we're not moving the ball enough to keep up with those turnovers, because turnovers are going to happen. You want to limit your turnovers, but that shouldn't come at the cost of not moving the basketball, and that usually leads to a lot more assists. And so what you're seeing over the last 20 games was the Wolves kind of getting a little stagnant on some of the offensive stuff, and they would probably agree with that, and Finch would probably agree with that as well. And they just needed more flow. They needed more pace with their offense, mostly in the half court there. We did see some pace, as we see we're 7th in pace over this 20-game stretch. But a lot of that comes from our transition offense and our defense, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But in the half court, I think sometimes that ball just gets a little sticky, and we just got to keep it moving. But that was probably the thing that I noticed the most in this last 20 games is that assist to turnover ratio is not where you want it to be. But I feel like over this last 20 games of the season, as you're already seeing with a huge win against Denver on Sunday, it's going in the right direction. For being more part of it is just being more focused. I think I'm not too worried about this statistic, as it doesn't kind of show the whole season in my point of view. As you can see, we're 15th in that number. It's kind of been where we've been at over this time in the last couple of years. A lot of it has to do with kind of our type of offense. And so, I mean, you're not going to see like what you see in Denver, where there's a lot of cutting. There's in OKC, a lot of cutting, where you get a high number of assists usually. A lot of our scoring comes from even just like 2 passes, and then that pass turns into a driving lane, which might not lead to a direct assist. And so that's why that number is not super high. But if it's in the 15th area, you're not too concerned. As long as we're not turning the ball over, that's kind of the key there. We just want the ball to be moving. I mean, overall, what you don't want to see is like a major change in percentage of any certain statistic. It's good to see that between those 20 games, even though it didn't feel very good, we still left with an above 500 record. But we definitely lost some games that we shouldn't have. With that being said, there hasn't been a huge difference compared to the whole season. The only major difference was that one that I pointed out with the assist to turnover ratio. Other than that, you're seeing a lot of green over this wonderful website. So that's kind of gives you an idea of this. Wolves offense has definitely taken a leap even from last year. 2 or 3 years ago, a giant leap in the right direction. Offensive play type, over the 20 games, I mean, that this kind of stuff just doesn't really change, but just gives you a good glimpse of kind of how we're getting our points. You're going to see some clips in a little bit here as I break down some gameplay as to why our offense has looked so good this year. Some of the things that caught my eye: spot up 3-pointers, number 2 in the league in that, and one of our most used actions. So you're thinking of coming off or Ant or Randall in isolation situations, looking to kick it out to others. You're looking for post-up situations where Randall kind of picks it up, works through, fires it off, and then maybe even some kick out off of the pick and rolls or handoffs that you've seen quite a bit of with Ant. They might not lead to direct assist, but they lead to the next pass, which would be considered that spot up 3 there, or a 2-point attack. But being that our shooting's been so good, you usually see us score at a high clip from there, and that's where we get a lot of our offense. When that ball's not moving as well, that's where our offense kind of struggles. So that can be considered high variance type of gameplay, but I think it is sustainable as you've seen it last year. This hasn't really changed much from last year is where we're getting our stuff. It's more so how much more efficient we are at those things. So second one that's caught my eye is the handoffs, and as we'll point out in film here, Ant and Rudy have an incredible two-man game that is pretty underrated, I think, as you don't see a lot of Rudy getting that ball necessarily, but his screen assists and his ability to create space for Ant is a perfect combination and something that's extremely underrated for this Timberwolves team. And then something that has been really refreshing is some off-screen, more off-screen action this year. Fans have been kind of clamoring for it. They've been wanting it so bad, and they said we got to just have more actions off the ball, not just standing and watching two people. And I think that's gone down a lot, standing and watching two people kind of operate versus last year. If you just look at last year, it looked so clunky at times. This year, there's a lot more action. Just go back and watch some games from last year, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about here. But those off-screen actions for Nas, for Jaden, have opened up a lot of avenues. Even Dante getting in the mix, very elite off ball. Those three guys working off ball, getting into their spots. That's been key for our success here and offensively this season. And then the big caveat this year, and something that has improved even a little bit in this last 20 games, is transition offense. And we get 20% of our possessions in transition, which is huge for us. And we're 8th in the league in transition. And so this is good signs. Where we're getting our offense, these are all, if I'm looking at it from a coaching perspective, you're liking the percentage of possessions and different things. You would like to see our pick and roll efficiency be a little bit better because you see a lot of that in the playoffs, but I think we don't really score a ton off of that pick and roll because they load up so much on Ant, and who is our primary ball handler. And he's going to be scoring off a lot of those things, but a lot of those turn into those spot-up situations or could be considered handoffs because Rudy likes to dribble into it to give more space. And we'll talk about that when we do the film. I'll try to find some clips that kind of explains that versus a true pick and roll coming off of, like you see Luka and the Lakers run, where Luka's kind of bringing the ball down slowly, calls for that screen, come up and get it. Whereas you see kind of an action where Rudy gets it, they pitch it, and we are in a kind of a reverse pitch and chase action. Again, hard to explain. I'll show you in a second. But one of our worst ones I just want to point out is our cutting, 29th in cutting. It's just something that is just not in our arsenal, really. We just don't have guys that are looking to make those cuts. And we don't really have those guys that are looking to make those passes for those cuts and reading that defense, as a lot of our off-ball movement is just to kind of create space for some on-ball dribble drive. That's just kind of how our DNA of our team is, but maybe the addition of Kyle Anderson you'll find some more of those cutting actions. It'll be interesting to see what that percentage is like if he plays quite a bit. Guys like Io, pretty good cutter as well. That's why you kind of haven't seen him really flourish so far, but who knows? It might change a little bit. We could be even more well-rounded offense than we already are. But I definitely say Finch has got the boys buzzing right now. And if you're a Wolves fan, just think back to 2 years ago when you were like, gosh, if we could just have some more offensive firepower, we would be cooking. And here we are. All right, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Overall, the team is 9th in defensive rating. Coach Finch and the staff has made it a kind of a point this year to say that we need to focus on being a defensive-minded team. Now, a lot of people point to the numbers and be like, well, clearly this team is not a defensive-minded team. And you can see it, too, on the court sometimes with their lack of focus. But I think they're very capable of being a defensive-minded team. And I think they need to be a defensive-minded team. And that's kind of what Finch and the staff is insinuating. As they want their players, they need their players to bring that focus on the defensive end as we get to the crunch time of the season, as well as into the playoffs. Okay, let's get to the stats here. Defensively, again, like I said, 9th in defensive rating, but you're seeing that 114.6, 13th overall on opponents' points per game. Some of the best stats, though, on the defensive end of the side of the floor is top 10 team in opponents' effective field goal percentage And then if we go over to the 4 factors here, opponent turnover percentage is 12th. 10th in the last 20 games. This is the X factor. I think the Wolves have made it a point to, they're not going to be kind of like a lockdown defensive team where you're going to miss a bunch of shots and they're going to be a force of nature that way. They're more so going to make a ton of plays defensively by getting a lot of tips and steals, being very active. That seems to be their MO, and it seems to be their game plan. It seems to be what the staff wants the players to do defensively. And so the best defensive games that they have are the ones where they're really active, really aggressive on the ball, and they're creating a ton of turnovers. That's when the coaching staff seems to be the most happy. One of the worst stats that I got to point out is the opponent free throw rate at 25th in the league. If you're looking at the over the stretch here, this is where we really felt it, and that opponent free throw rate. We foul a ton, and I think Finch talks about that a lot, being disciplined, but not being, or being aggressive, but not being out of control. And sometimes we see that quite a bit. And so, yeah, that number needs to go down a little bit, but that's kind of been our MO for a while. We're a high fouling team. It's just because of how aggressive we are on the ball and trying to make plays. And then over the stretch here, you see the opponent effective field goal percentage did go up a little bit, and that's kind of what we're feeling it the most compared to where we were 7th in the league. So 7th to 14th, huge difference, and that's a lot of it has to do with the lack of focus that we had over that stretch. But I think you're seeing it in this last 5 games. Actually, let's take a look at the last 5 games here. Yeah, you can see that opponent effective field goal percentage go kind of back to where that is at the norm versus the 20 games before. You saw that kind of jump up, and I feel like that was a big difference. A lot of it has to do too with our, like I said, the aggressiveness on which we are contesting shots, and I feel like we've done a great job of that. As a coach, you want to see this contested shot number be in a good spot. You want to be contesting almost every single shot if you could. You want to limit the amount of open shots a team gets. That's a sign of a good defensive team. And you want to have a lot of deflections. Them being 20th is kind of interesting to me, but I feel like they're creating a lot more turnovers or deflections of late. But again, this is what Finch and company really want this team to be. Their MO is going to be aggressive on the ball and trying to create those turnovers. Let's look at the play type. Again, I like to look at this stuff because it really gives you an idea of like a stat that tells you which kind of things that the Wolves are the best at or the worst at, if you want to look at it that way. But some of the things that we are good at, we are number 1 team in the league in off-screen defense, which is huge. I think a lot of it has to do with how aggressive that we are off the ball and on the ball, and navigating those screens and those actions, and then isolation. And this is huge. The off-screen, off-ball numbers that we're seeing and how effective we are. That matches the eye test. Now, which teams are really good at that? You have the Thunder, you have the Spurs, you have the Nuggets, teams like that. And so this Wolves team, I think, just looking at on the defensive end of the floor, and this is kind of what they're talking about, where it's like we need to be in a defensive team. We need our identity to be defensive, is because the things that they're doing well defensively are going to help them down the stretch, if that makes sense. The offensive stuff is going to come. Their defense, if they can pick up their defense and they're locked in on defense, the offensive stuff comes. And that's, as a coach, you're trying to always trying to remind the players that if that defense is there, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. One of our not as great categories, I should say, is our pick and roll defense, and our handoff defense. Now, this has improved throughout the season. We were ranked, I think, 28th and 29th, I think, in the first Crunch time report that I did. It improved a little bit in the quarter 2 one, and now looking at it now, we have done a lot better versus the pick and roll ball handler. We're up to 15th versus where we were at the beginning of the year in like the late 20s. And then for pick and roll on the roll man, we are looking at 21 over the last 20 games. Overall in the season, that's 17th and 19th. So both of those have improved quite a bit. But you're seeing over that 20 games, some of that stuff kind of lapsed a little bit in that regard. But we have not been a strong pick and roll defense team. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it has to be with that pick navigation that I talked about in the last two crunch time reports. I'm going to try to really show how we've made changes to improve that and why that number has gone down significantly. I'll say defensively as a whole, seeing this improvement should give Wolves fans, at least statistically, looking at these stats, should give Wolves fans a sigh of relief, as you feel like this team is kind of like in no man's land right now. But if you're looking at the numbers compared to the beginning of the year and these little stretches, I know the staff likes to split them up into little sections here and kind of look at the whole piece as a whole at the end. This is a good sign. We're moving in the right direction. A lot of it has to do with the focus to attention of detail, and doing the little things like they've been harping for the last couple of years. And you're seeing that happen more consistently. That's a great sign for the Wolves going into the rest of the season here. All right, let's go through some of the players in the last 20 games. All right, let's start with Ant here. I love to look at this trend report tab on Wolfwise Stats, and it really gives you a good glimpse at what how they're doing. You can break it down over a 5-game stretch, up to 20 games, even more, whole season as well, season by season. Go check it out. Ant in this last 20 games, he's gone down, I would say, efficiently offensively, and you can kind of see that in some of our losses as a whole. But for the most part, he's just doing what Ant does best, and that's score points. And he's actually gone up in scoring a little bit over this last 20 games. You're looking at numbers, it's not terribly off. I think the one concerning factor would have been like the turnovers, and that kind of goes hand in hand with kind of how we've been playing in the last 20 games. But again, not concerned. One other tool that's really cool for looking at individual stats is this tool called the scatter tool. You can basically make whatever scatter plot you want. What's really cool too is you can go onto the scatter tool tab here, and it actually they have now a scatter plot wizard. So you could pick kind of like your theme. I think I went with situational to find this, and I used the preset of Clutch Hero because I was just curious, like because Ant's been known as like a clutch, super clutch player. Well, let's go clutch points versus clutch effective field goal percentage, and that's already a preset on Wolfwise Stats with the title The Clutch Hero. So click on that, generate it. You can customize it kind of however you want to as well, like you saw in the last video that we made. But they added this feature which makes it just easier for people to just come in and check out some of these presets that they have that really show which players are the best at certain things, which is pretty cool. I'll show you another one here in a little bit with Rudy Gobert. But as you can see here, clutch effective field goal percentage right here. So that means you're shooting it fairly effective, obviously. You're shooting it at a high percentage, but also scoring a lot of clutch points. And so Ant's kind of, I would say, in the best position of that, number one clutch player, I would say, this year. You have other guys like Maxey and SGA, obviously, but even another MVP candidate in Cade Cunningham, but Ant is in a whole nother tier, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's check it out on Randall. I would say out of all the players, Randall probably had one of the tougher stretches. Now, I'm on the camp that I think that he's a little injured. I think he's dealing with some stuff, working through some things. I know a couple times that Finch said that he was sick, under the weather. If he's had anything that I've had and my wife have had in this household, that thing takes you out for like a month. So that's been going around. I just think kind of Randall too. He might have stretches like this, but you're going to see him really come on when it matters the most, and that's during the playoffs. And so I'm not too concerned. These averages are down a little bit. The assist numbers were very high at the beginning of the year for him, which was great. And you saw how effective he was at the beginning of the year, especially when Ant was out. But you kind of see just from the beginning of the season and how in this total net points by game, that's an ESPN analytics thing. I just love this trend. You can kind of see visually, okay, how is it going throughout the season? You can see that like coming back down, I guess you could call it. But again, I think as a second option, Randall gives you exactly what you need for the Timberwolves. So again, not too concerned. I think he's working through some stuff, dealing with some injuries. I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a Wolves fan. It's Randall. He's going to give us those goosebumps when it matters most. All right, let's move on here to Jaden. Now, Jaden has had just one of my favorite years I can remember for him, and he's taken a huge leap. And one of the things that I want to point out is that three-point shooting. Just from the last 20 games, that has gone up an incredible percentage from three-point land, up almost 8%. 7.1%, which is pretty impressive for any player to get. Just in the last 20 games, he plays every game, so that's an impressive leap that he's taken in his 3-point shooting throughout the season, and it's really helped us win a lot of games in that middle chunk of the season. And now he's helped us win a couple games that we probably would have lost if he is not playing as good as he's playing. So. I just really want to give him his flowers in his 3-point shooting. He's just been incredible. One of my favorite games that he's played was that Portland game, where he showed out in a lot of different ways. So, shout out to Jaden. Now let's move on here to Rudy. Again, I switched out the turnovers because he's at a solid number. Didn't go up or down too much, but I just wanted to point out his blocks. I've kind of stayed at that 1.7 mark, and it hasn't really gone up or down. He's not as active at blocking shots as he has in the past years, per se, but I do think he's been very active on the boards. He's been pretty active in general contesting shots, and so I'm not worried about that block shots necessarily, but I just wanted to look at that total net points down to bottom too. As you can see, as the year's gone on, he's really stepped up in a big way. He's another reason why I think we've won and stayed above 500 in this last 20 games here, which is huge. We need guys to step up when maybe there's some other guys who are hurt or just injured playing through things or just kind of in a slump shooting wise. Rudy's going to give you night in, night out a great effort. And one sneaky thing that he's really done a great job of this year is just crashing the offensive glass at a high rate. He's always been really good at that, but this year especially, he's been incredible at, and I think it's been a huge X factor for him. And I think that's something that has really unlocked this offense in the half court game. It's kind of like you can trust taking a good shot that you might get a second chance by Rudy just tapping it back out to you, which is it's a good skill to have. You're seeing that a lot more. Now I want to highlight another scatter plot this is not a homemade one. This is one that was already created. This one's already a preset one called Hidden Impact, and it basically highlights the box outs versus screen assists, things that you don't show up in the box score, the hidden impact in the game, but they're super important. Boxing out, as a coach, I think we harp on it almost daily. Like if you're going to get some rebounds, you at least got to check your guy so he can't get the rebound. If you're not going to be able to get the board, your guy that you're guarding or guy that's next to you should also not get the rebound. You got to do what it takes. That's step number one of rebounding. Screen assists, those are huge too. And Rudy is, I think, the best in the league at setting ball screens. and off-ball screens in general. His handoffs are incredible. His footwork, a lot of it has to do with that footwork. And I'm just glad that there's a stat that actually shows how valuable he is in compared to the entire league. As you can see here, this is just even sorted by top 100 in minutes, which is showing, showing Jokic, showing Cat. You can see some of our guys down here. Gobert's in a whole nother stratosphere with these two things. He boxes out, he goes and gets the rebounds, and he's also constantly setting great screens, which lead to a lot of our assists, whether it's direct or indirect. But I just really wanted to highlight that because I know Rudy gets a lot of hate on the offensive end, and this is his value here. And this is something that leads to winning basketball, and leads to us being one of the better offensive teams in the league. Okay, let's move on to Nas here. Points-wise has gone down, but I feel like over the stretch he's really taken off, shooting the ball really well and shooting at a high clip from three-point line. He's up to 40% in this last 20 games. The thing that for him is just his energy that he comes with off the bench. It's really sparked from Bones, and him and Bones have a great pairing coming off the bench. And you can see throughout the year, he's had some big peaks and some pretty low lows, but since the start of the new year, he's been pretty constant up in that green zone here, total net points. And so, yeah, it's been great to see. I just think he's not really forcing a ton of shots. He's taking a lot of really smart shots. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He seems like he's just really having fun at this part of the season. And this has just been a tough year for Nas, and so I really am glad to see him having fun and playing with a little chip, And the beginning of the year, it just felt like his mind was somewhere else other than basketball, and that's totally that's totally okay. And I think fans in Minnesota realized that, and they weren't too hard on him, and I'm glad for that reason. But again, I'm just happy with where he's at in the year, and I think he's just gonna carry it over in the playoffs. I have to talk about Dante DiVincenzo because this guy has been the pulse of our team. If I had to pick a guy as the Nuggets broadcast, I guess not the broadcast, their specific one, but when we played the Nuggets just recently here, he has the best net rating in the NBA. I'm just going to say that again. Out of all the players in the NBA, he has the best net rating. That's incredible. And he doesn't show up box score wise. If you watch and really know basketball, that guy does everything. He just does stuff. Does all the stuff. Everything that you could ask for. And that late in the Nuggets game, I know that's not in the 20 games, but it's a great example of him just making that play on Jokic, getting that back tap steal, going the other way, finishing it during the time where we needed to stop a run. That kind of stuff, or just getting a transition two-on-one block, and forcing it to go the other way, getting some steals, hitting a timely three-pointer when you need it the most. He's the ideal guy, and you can see this trend. He's just skyrocketing in these last 5 games, leading up to this stretch that we're on right here. But he's peaking at the right time. He's taking a lower volume amount of shots, which has been really, I think, really good for him. He realizes that this team needs more of his gamer attitude versus his shot-making ability, which has led to him just making really timely shots for us, and it's been very impactful and very important for us. So I just want to give Dante his flowers, and just I don't think he gets talked enough about, honestly, and he should be talked about more in the national media when we play those games. But sometimes you're not going to get your due until it's done. So keep it up. Now, Io's had an interesting transition here to the Wolves. You can see these numbers there's red everywhere, and that's not good. But I think in the last 5 games, you've seen a different change of pace for him. He's just trying to figure out what his role is. And you saw his value, again, outside of the 20-game stretch we're talking about here. But this Nuggets game was a perfect example of why we needed Io, a guy like Io, is that he's going to play when Jaden's off the floor. He's going to be guarding that primary ball handler, and he's pretty good at getting around ball screens. He's very physical. He can guard kind of anywhere between those really shifty guards to a pretty physical guard, and so that's just a good guy to like have on your coming off your bench to kind of supplement those minutes that if Jaden does get in foul trouble, or if he just needs we need a breather for him and we want to go in a defensive heavy lineup, like we can even go Jaden and Io. I mean, that switchability has been huge, and so I could see it. I see it coming. I think we just got to be a little bit more patient. If you're a little worried that he's not producing what he did in Chicago, you got to think of the situations a little bit different. And I love his mindset. I said that from the beginning. He just wants to win, and so I think he's going to fit in sooner than later. Now we got to talk about Bones. As you see, a lot of green, and he's been, I think, my last 20 games, my quarter 3 MVP, because the juice that he's brought. I think we'd be below 500 if he wasn't on this basketball team playing how he was. And his contagious, positive energy is just, it's been awesome. He hasn't had the best like shooting games, but of late it's been a lot better. You can see up to 43.8% from the 3-point line. That's just up 5% in this 20-game stretch here. So pretty impressive stuff. I just love watching Bones. He's like the ultimate vibe guy of the year for the Timberwolves, and it's somebody that we've really needed. We really needed. When we lost Nah was that vibe guy coming off the bench. He's gonna bring that very positive energy. Bones replace that positive vibe energy coming off the bench. So you need a guy like that on your team. Every great championship team has that, and that's what I'm saying. Wolves championship team. Really quickly, let's just look at some of the best lineups here. I think Nas at the 4 with Rudy and the starters has been the best on the season, as you can see here from the net rating. Now, we don't have a lot of minutes with this pairing with 76 minutes compared to our starting lineup. So the starting lineup has actually been pretty solid, but I just thought it was interesting to point out that lineup has been pretty solid, which is great, because if Randall is not, when it gets time to playoff time, and let's just say Randall's in a slump or whatever, for whatever reason, we know we have Nas, we can put him in that 4 spot, and it will look good, and it has looked good. Can it sustain? It kind of depends on the matchups, and that's when you get to the playoffs. And this is the best part of this Wolves team, and this is something that I think fans need to realize, Wolves fans, is that this Wolves team has the most amount of buttons we can push than we've had under Finch. And so seeing all these lineups and what they can provide, if we need a defensive edge, we can go this direction. If we need an offensive edge, we can go this direction. If we need some pace, we can go this direction. If we need to slow it down and get some physicality, we can go this direction. We have the most amount of pieces that we could throw in and throw at teams than I think we've ever had under Finch. And so I'm pretty excited for this playoff push here at the end of the season. Now, I just want to highlight some of like between the best offensive lineups and defensive lineups. Offensively, our best offensive lineup makes sense with Randall at the 5, Nas at the 4, Jaden, and Dante. That makes sense. That lineup also gives up quite a few points with 115 defensive rating, but that pace, 112 pace, is just incredible. They just get that ball moving, and so that's a lineup you throw in when you're like, okay, we got a little lead. Let's try to extend this lead and hope that we can get a couple stops and get some transition going the other way. And you've seen them take it to teams with this lineup, but that not being able to get stops can also turn it in a whole different direction. So it's just a very vital lineup that has played quite a bit of minutes at 79 minutes together. And let's look at some of the best defensive lineups here. The one up at the top here with Rudy at the 5, Nas at the 4. We got Bones, Jaden, and Dante. 69 minutes together, but 87 defensive rating. This is a team that these guys are going to get up and guard. Nas get, like, say what you want about Nas's defensive abilities, but he gets up and guards and gets after it. And so Dante as well, Jaden, those guys just get up, and Bones is going to give some effort. And so I think with Rudy in the paint kind of protecting, these guys are very active on the ball, forcing downhill, forcing tough shots. This is why you're seeing that rating like that. So it's not like an incredible offensive lineup, but it is that might be a lineup that you throw out there if you need like a guard-heavy team. Could be like a Thunder for a situation where you can just defend and still provide some offense on the other end if Ant's off the floor. Now, the variable to that would be if Ant's on the floor, which is that second best one right below it. Obviously, when the playoffs come, Ant's going to just take it up whole another leaf. There's been a lot of talk about his defense this year. I'm not too concerned again. I think it takes a lot of energy on the offensive end to do and to be at the level that he is. That, and you see that with Randall too. They use so much energy on that offensive end. It's hard to be superstars on both ends of the floor. You could be a superstar MVP and still be really solid. I think they could get a little bit better, but you'll see it when the playoffs come around. You saw it. We just finished up the Grizzly game, and Ant kind of took over defensively at the end of that game. You know if he needs to, he can step up and do it, and you can see that with these numbers right here. But yeah, it's just pretty interesting to see those defensive lineups and some of the guys that are in those groups that have the best defensive rating. Now, a lot of that, there's a lot of variables that go into these lineup things. I just think it's interesting to look at as a whole.
All right, I'm gonna use this OKC, the most recent OKC and Wolves regular season game here back at the end of January. Again, OKC is not full strength, but my goal of this is just to show you what they're doing well at this point. And this is a good example of that. Rudy's ability, screen and roll ability, plus why we're so effective in the handoff situation. We do a lot of these things called pitch and chases. So what Jaden's going to do here is he's going to dribble his guy down right to about here. Okay, it's going to give Rudy enough time to kind of get into position at that spot. Okay, now from there, he's going to kind of, instead of just setting a normal traditional pick and roll where he's just going to come off of this, you're able to kind of get up into your offensive player, kind of forces you off your mark. What we like to do here in this situation is do what we call a pitch and chase. So Jaden's going to be right here. Rudy's going to be here. Let's play it. I'll show you. Okay, so normally, like we can see here, you could get up on the ball, but as soon as Jaden's going to pass it to Rudy here, you kind of have to step back a second, because if you press up, Jaden's just going to go and back cut right here. And so you can't, this is why the pitch and chase is so effective, and this is why the Wolves are one of the better teams in the handoff situation. It's because they have unlocked this with Rudy over the last 2 seasons and made them really effective. Ant is incredibly effective at this handoff action, and that's why you're seeing him last year have a lot of 3-pointers because of this. So let's play it here. Handoff action. Now Rudy, pretty crafty with this, but he's such a big body now. OKC's guarding Rudy, knowing that he's not a shooter. We're like, all right, we're gonna keep our paint protector down here. This causes a problem because with this pitch and chase, again, you can't be really attached, because if you're attached, it just becomes a 2-on-1. Jaden's just gonna rip his guy here. Go baseline. Rudy's gonna hit him in the backdoor cut. There's nobody in the help position on the backside, so it makes it really tough for the defenses. You kind of have to, you're going to be in a bad spot. Rudy's incredibly good footwork on the screen situation here, where he's going to set up Jaden nicely. He's going to put himself in a good spot where we got to decide, okay, if I go over, Rudy's just going to roll. That's just going to be a lob. If I go under, at least I have a chance. Now, Rudy's pretty smart with this. He knows this. If players go under, what is he going to do? He's going to set a nice little rescreen here. So he's really good at his footwork and switching his hips around create a really big advantage where you have just a wide open set shot here. And um, you'll see Jaden's been very effective with this year. And you'll see Ant do this quite a bit. Dante. Okay, this is an awesome example of an off-ball action here. We have a simple down screen for Ant, and you have to stay glued to Ant because he's such a good shooter on the outside. He can't go under. You don't want to switch because you don't want Hardenstein on him. So the Wolves have done this quite a bit recently where they load up basically on one side, create this off-ball action, and then do what I like to call a rise pick and roll where we're coming up from the baseline here. We're setting a screen kind of like on the opposite side. And then this creates kind of like a 2-on-1 downhill action. So you set that on the back screen. You're hoping that the big is kind of in this drop situation where you can just roll straight to the front of the rim and we can just throw it over the top and finish. Now, SGA is pretty smart. He gets over, takes away that Gobert dive right away, and Hardenstein comes up and hard shows. But Ant, he's taken a step this year. He's very patient in this, and he understands that, okay, if he's up here, I can still attack. I want his help here. Rudy's going to be in a good spot underneath the hoop. We'll have a disadvantage, and we'll have Jaden in the corner wide open. Nas, one of these two or one of these three guys in the backside who are pretty good shooters, really good shooters, is going to be wide open in this situation. So all this is going through your heads. But the Wolves have done a great job of creating these kind of situations. It starts with their off-ball movement that leads into what they're best at, and that's that pick and roll, handoff actions with Rudy Gobert. You see, hard show. Okay, now I got the advantage. Got some space. I'm going to find Rudy for the finish. Okay, here's an example of the defensive end of things. With how we've gotten better at navigating this screen. Now, Jaden, we still are very high up on the ball, which is okay because that's just our strategy, what we want to do. We want high ball pressure. We want to get tips and steals. And this is another game where we got a lot of tips and steals, which led to transition, which we've executed very well this year with Bones and now Io pushing the pace a little bit. Now, the key to this is navigating screens. OKC does a great job of they come up. Okay, SGA is great at navigating those screens. He had a rough game in this one because Jaden did such a good job, and Dante on the ball sometimes too would do such a great job of navigating these screens. Okay, in the past we've sometimes gotten too far up on his hip early, which has created this like downhill attack, which puts Rudy kind of in a bind, and SGA is just really good at these spots right here of getting whatever he wants. And if you help up too much, then he's just going to drive all the way to the rim. So Jane does a great job staying flat, making him use that screen, and kind of funneling and getting around the screen easier and staying attached. That's the key in this situation is he wants to stay attached. He knows Rudy's going to be here to help in these spots, but he can't stay there forever. And this is an example. They score on this, but it shows that our navigating of that screen is making it so that guys like SGA can't really get as loose. It's going to be a pick your poison situation. That's why the pick and roll is so effective. I would like Nas. I know he's guarding Williams over here, but in this situation, I think I would like Nas a little bit more in help. Maybe Bones a little bit lower eventually. Kind of in this elbow and this block area and be able to scramble out. But let's play it through here. Jaden navigates that screen. Ant's kind of in a good spot. Yeah, and if I was Nas, I'd be a little bit over just to take away that pass. But overall, I like what we're seeing here. I'd rather have Hardenstein score that tough basket over Rudy than anything else. Here's an example of our point of attack defense, our active hands. Wolves have done a great job over the last 20 games of doing just this. It creates transition, which we've excelled at this year compared to the years in the past. So this is why teams are going to be in some binds come playoffs as this is the best Wolves shooting team that we've had. Jaden's taken a leap. Nas is just getting better and better. Dante is just an incredible shooter. And with the addition of Bones, Io is going to provide some of that shooting. It just creates situations like this where you can't double Ant. And Ant's been doing an incredible job of decision making as he's seen it all now at this point. And so he reads this. All right, two coming on the ball here. I know I just got to get this ball in my hand, but I want them to commit. And that's kind of the key thing with Ant is he's gotten very smart with the fact that, okay, I want you to overcommit on me. I want you to get to these spots where you're so tight. I'm going to step through, get a nice pass, and we're going to have an advantage on the backside. And he does just that here. Step through. That pass is just great. Shout to Rudy and Dante crashing there. Dante and Rudy do all the dirty things that you don't really see. That's why this starting lineup's been so effective lately. Now, I want to highlight this. Again, great pick navigation here by Clark. Clark, unfortunately, is probably not going to play as much. I mean, I don't want to rule him out of any situation, but he does a great job navigating the screen. Io does a great job of navigating screens. Now we just have some more defenders that are good at that. Dante's incredible at navigating screens. If we want to throw Conley in there, he's going to be good at that. Bones even. We've gotten better at that as the year has gone by. Now the key, I think personally, the key to slowing down OKC and trying your best to slow down Shea is, in this game, he was pretty frustrated. He had to really work for his points. Is you have to commit to this spot right here if you're off the ball. Okay. If you're playing OKC, the two things you need to do is make sure that you navigate these screens effectively. Okay. That means getting over or getting through in some way, shape, or form, or if you're going to switch, if you have a switchable lineup, you're going to switch, go for it. But you need to, on this pick and roll, take this elbow away. And Ant, I don't know if someone's talking to him on the sideline here or he's just looking. He's going to do a great job of this, forcing that kick out. That's what you have to do against these guys if you want to have a chance to win, is force this kick out. You can't let SGA just get to his spots and just do whatever he wants, because he's really good at that. And so you'll see here as I play it, Ant just stays there. They switch that handoff. They're forcing Dort into a tough drive shot. Forcing a tough shot. I mean, that's what you want. You want that to be every single time down the floor. It should be a tough shot like that. Watch this play by Ant here. Great pick and roll. He's got 4 guys on him. He's going to find the open guy. Last year, Ant maybe would have forced that. Maybe wouldn't even driven into the paint. Dante's been just awesome. As you see, active hands here, pushing it up the floor. And Jaden. Woo-wee! Here's a great example of that off-ball action. Rudy setting good screens here. He's getting shoved. It's just a big body. You can just hide behind that and chuck it up. Not illegal because he's just standing there. See, this is where you're getting all these spot-up three-pointers and why we were so good at that. And it's just incredible at making the right decisions this year. He should be in everybody's MVP, at least top 3. There you go. There's active hands. Showtime. This will be the last one here, and how beautiful. I just want to show this play because of how beautiful it was. And it really shows the growth of Anthony Edwards with his patience, his ability to read what he sees in front of him. Gosh, he's taking a leap this year. Right. So you'll see a good old pitch and chase. Now, again, this is why the pitch and chase is so effective, is you kind of have to get off of him. If you push up tight, like we're going to see here, he's going to push up tight, makes it really tough to navigate whatever's coming up next. Again, this is a tough spot to be in. You see Hardenstein. Hardenstein's going to have to drop down because he sees Ant coming down full steam. He's going to have to leave Rudy. But they do a good job of kind of working through this first initial action. They work through it. Rudy gives him back. Okay, we're going to reset. Now we have him in a good spot. Ant takes one dribble. This one dribble was key in this entire play. He takes one dribble over. It forces both of these defenders to step up and try to take that away. Now Rudy sees that. He's going to set a nice screen here. Ant's going to come off of it and navigate it from there. Just beautiful basketball.
To kind of wrap it up here, I think the focus going into this next quarter is focus. You saw in this first couple of games here, after the 60th game, we have the Nuggets. We're on a little streak here. You could see the energy shift. They've talked about it in the media. Ant's talking about it. Finch is talking about how this last 20-game sprint is really important to get you momentum going into the playoffs. And you've seen it every year under Finch, and he has an emphasis on finishing the regular season strong. But we do have one of the top 5 toughest schedules remaining in the league. And so knowing that we've already beat the Nuggets in Denver, which was one of those games that were kind of highlighted as going to be a tough one for us, that's huge. I think that kind of gave us a good start to this, because if we don't win that game in Denver, we're definitely probably losing this one to Memphis, because we get in these kind of slumps like that. But I think this is a good start to this last 20 game stretch. One thing that I think is going to be huge for this team, and I've been talking about this all year and all last offseason here, is we kind of needed that raw guy back. We needed a guy like Kyle Anderson back, who is not only just going to bring some juice and bring some competitive vocalization on the court and behind the scenes. We also just needed a guy with a very high basketball IQ who could be kind of that coach on the floor. It's very valuable. Mike has been that guy. That's why Mike's been playing so many minutes, because that is such a valuable thing to have out there. But he obviously is not at his form that he's been in the last couple of years. He's dealing with a lot of injuries, it seems like, and the size of some of these teams that we're trying to compete against, it's just not a good matchup for him. But he does provide a lot of leadership. Now, Kyle, being that he's a lot bigger, he's more versatile with who we can match up with, who we could throw him in with in lineup situations, can provide that stuff that Conley has been providing, but not at the expense of the defensive end, if that makes sense. I think it's a huge addition, and I think a lot of people were like, well, is he going to play or is he not going to play? I think Dane Moore said it best. He's going to play. He's going to play at least somewhere between that 15 to 20-minute range. Because I think, as you saw, he could be very valuable for us down the stretch here. Now, can we get that 2 seed? Going back to that question, where can the Wolves end up by the end of the regular season? I personally think that we can get to that 2 seed. It's going to be tough because the Spurs just went on a huge streak. But they're kind of coming down to earth a little bit here. And we're peaking at the right time. There's not that many. We're not behind by that many games. Like, looking at the standings, we are 5.5 games behind them. We've won 4 in a row. Right now we're tied with the Rockets for the 3rd seed. So it's going to be it would be really tough to catch those Spurs. Is it possible? It's still possible. But you have to rely on a lot of things. I think what the Wolves should be shooting for is that 3 seed. I think the 3 seed, we should be leaving the regular season with no lower than that 3 seed. If we have that 4 seed, you live with it, but that should be our goal for the rest of the season, is get that 3 seed. The minimum, we 4 seed. We need to have a home playoff game, and maybe even a second one if we play our cards right, or whatever may happen. But yeah, I don't know. I've been very high on this Wolves team all year, and they're clicking at the right time, and so the sky's the limit. But thanks again for watching. I'm going to be coming out with one of these at the very end of the season, kind of a playoff preview, and then you'll check out my playoff series reports. I want to try to do a video report for each playoff series, similar to what I did with the written reports last year. I had a couple people say that those are pretty cool. I spent a gross amount of time putting those together, so I thought it'd be fun to do a video version of that, because it just helps me as a coach. I just can't watch basketball and have fun watching it. I have to actually dive completely in. So again, thanks for watching. Yeah, go Wolves.